Hi guys, welcome to my video on circular saw safety here. I'm just going to go through the basics of circular saw safety and how to make a cut without endangering ourselves. First things first, always before we start moving, is personal protective equipment. So you'll see I have my safety glasses on here. And another thing before using any tool with rotating parts is we're going to tie back long hair if we have long hair, or make sure we're not wearing any long dangling jewelry. I'm going to take my chain here and tuck it into my t-shirt. Okay, before I get set up, I want a nice stable place here to make my cut. So instead of just using sawhorses, I'm going to make myself a little table here so I make sure that I'm working nice and safe. Now, I'm not going to just put a piece of OSB here to cut on. What I'm going to do is make sure that I use some screws and fasten this down to prevent any slippage or possible endangerment while I'm making my cut. I'm just going to go ahead and put a couple screws in this so I know my work table is secure and isn't going to slip around on me. There we go. The next thing I'm going to do is get my tool, and I'm going to have a look at that. I'm going to go over that and make sure I'm familiar with any of the safety features on it, check that the blade is in good condition, and just make sure it's in good working operation condition. So in this case, I'm using a cordless skill saw. So one thing that's nice about that is I don't have to worry about ensuring that my cord is out of my cutting path or is a tripping hazard or potentially causes any other safety hazard on the job site. The cordless skill saw also tends to have a different safety feature on it. You can't just accidentally depress the trigger. There's a secondary device that you have to depress before you pull the trigger to initiate the cutting of the blade. So before I get into making my cut here, I want to check my blade to ensure that I have the right diameter of blade and arbor on this. In this case, it's a 6 5/8 arbor on here, so I match that to this. And this is a 6 3/4 inch blade matched to this saw. Some circular saws use 7 1/4, or I think there's an 8 1/4 too, actually. But this is the smaller. It's a 6 1/2 inch blade, actually. Sorry, I was correcting myself. But I installed it earlier, so I know it's the correct blade for the saw. Also, I'm going to check how many teeth are on it. Just have a quick look and make sure that they're in good condition and they're not going to potentially fragment or endanger me when I'm making my cut. The saw seems to be in good working condition. I want to check my blade guard here and make sure that when I retract it, it automatically returns to the safe position afterwards. So I'm going to set this down for a second, and then I'm going to secure the piece of wood and I'm going to make a cut on here. For an example, I'm just going to make a shortcut off of a 2x4 here. I'm going to put it on my table. I'm going to make sure that I secure it to my table with a couple of clamps here, so I know it's not going to go anywhere when I'm trying to make my cut. For the example, I'm just going to cut a small 3-inch block off the end of this, but if I was cutting a longer piece of a 2x4, I'd want to make sure that that was supported so that when the offcut falls away from the work that I'm keeping, it doesn't bind on the blade. Okay, moving on here. I've inspected my tool. I've secured my work piece. The next step I want to do with my skill saw here is adjust the depth of cut. So the base is adjustable on the skill saw. I want to make sure I adjust it so that I don't have an excessive amount of blade sticking out past the bottom of my workpiece here. So how I'm going to do that is I'm just going to put my saw next to it and bring it up so it's about 1/8 or 1/4 of an inch deeper than the thickness of the material. I'm going to lock this blade down here like so. Next thing I want to do is I want to make sure I mark out my cut. I don't want to make a freehand cut because it'll be more difficult to make a straight cut, and it could cause potential binding of the blade, which could lead to kickback. I'm going to mark a nice square cut here. I want to make sure when I'm cutting, I'm using both hands on my tool and not using a hand to hold onto my piece for one-handed operation or securing that. I always want to make sure that I'm never putting my hand underneath my work or anywhere around where the blade is going to be exposed. Ideally, I want to keep my body out of the path of the blade, the rear of the blade. So I'm going to stand to the side here, two-handed operation. Then I'm just going to proceed to make my cut. I want to ensure that I don't have my blade up against my workpiece when I initiate the equipment. I want to make sure that my base is secure, the blade is running, and then I'm going to enter into my cut. Another note I want to make is that the widest part of the base is placed on the portion of the workpiece that I'm keeping, not on the piece that I'm cutting off. So two-handed operation, I'm going to initiate the equipment running, and then I'm just going to smoothly run the saw through until the workpiece falls away. You'll notice how after the cut was complete, I let the blade come to a stop and then removed the saw from the work. Hopefully you found that informative, and thank you very much.